right there, Diggsy. We're digging for wisdom again. Professor Diggs over there. I'm the Wizord over here. We're taking it seriously. I got the toothpick in, so you know I'm ready for action. UL Washington style, if y'all remember him from the early 80s in baseball. Probably not. Always played with the toothpick in his mouth. I guess nowadays you can just call me Dusty Baker or whatever, and I'm sure that'll get the DFW fans mad as heck because he's a Houston guy. But we're talking week 4, and there's a couple of districts that are in bye week. I know your favorite district is, and so we got some games to pick apart. But you know what? That gives me a chance to go see some small school teams because there's not a lot of some of the big actions not happening this week. So we got some games on the schedule this week, Diggsy, that I'm intrigued with. I got Salina and Anna, or what's at Salina, but that's going to be Anna, a team that couldn't really beat Salina forever, and then they beat them 2 times last year, and they're ready for that next meeting at Salina. And then we got Gunter and Brock up in Gunter. I think you're heading to that one yourself. Teddy Ball game will be at both of those games. Let's talk about those two, just the fact that we're getting big marquee small school games right in week 4.
Me and Teddy, we're just bonding all over the place. He's following me everywhere because he knows wherever I go, you're going to have an instant classic. At least last week, you'll have an instant classic, at least for one game. But you talk about toothpicks. You actually make me think about Razor Ramon. You know, the bad guy who'd hang around with the toothpick and just kind of throw the toothpick at you, and machismo, my man. And I think we're going to see some machismo this week in Gunter, the battle of 289 as Brock and Gunter are battling. And that game last year was a very defensive battle. And what I'm seeing this year is I think we're going to have the opposite. I think we're going to see highlights galore. You know, I don't think you sent anybody out to last year's game in Brock, but I think Touchdown Teddy is going to see some touchdowns because both teams have really clicked offensively, and I think their offenses are a little bit ahead of their defenses. Walker Overman is such a talented quarterback for Gunter. I mean, he runs their offense to perfection. And it was weird, the psychology thing I saw, because I like to watch some of the mindset going on. And for Gunter, it's like when Walnut Grove challenged them for that second quarter and that game was like within 10 points. It's like they took it personally. It's like, you guys, Walnut Grove are playing with us, the defending state champion Gunter Tigers. How dare you? And they turned on another level. It's like you could see it in their eyes. And it's like Coach Faisal over there, he wants this competition because once district starts, until they play Canadian in week 5, you're probably not going to see week 5 of the playoffs. You're not going to see any competition there. So this game for Brock, they are embracing it, and I think they're going to play it hard and full out. And I think that the coaching staff over there has got them peaked for this game. And Brock, we're seeing the same thing. We're seeing them grow over this. They have to return their quarterback, their stud running back, Reed Watkins, is over there at Fort Worth All Saints now. And last week against Wimberley, they outperformed my expectations for them, even in their loss. They started to, I challenged them in my District 4 3A report. I want to see somebody stand up offensively and be that guy, be that go-to guy, because Gunter's got that in Walker Overman, but they don't have that. And Brody Woods hasn't quite done that yet. And Carson Finney stepped up against Wimberley. Wimberley's a fantastic 4A D2 team, a team we might be seeing at AT&T. So you got both these teams playing peak football. I think it's going to be a fascinating game. It's trending toward an offensive battle, and if it's going to be an offensive shootout, I think Gunter has just a little bit more than Brock right now. I'm thinking Gunter is going to win a 42-35 game, but it wouldn't surprise me if Brock gets that late touchdown to make it 42-41, and then I have to hope for that 2-point conversion to fail, because Brock's going for the 2-point conversion in that setting. They're not going to overtime. So I think Gunter is going to win 42-41 or 42-35. Depending on how things go. It's going to be a fun game. Get up there early, touchdown Teddy, find a place to park. They got weird parking rules over there, so he may have to like hike in from Salina and just take a bus in or something, get an Uber.
That's not good. He's got to get out of there at halftime to see the other game I want you to talk about, which is Anna and Salina playing over there at that Bobcat Stadium, which is still relatively new because it's only 2-3 years old. It's a beautiful place. Matter of fact, when I told him he was going to that game, he thought he was going back to the old Bobcat Stadium, which was, he really would have had trouble parking there. I remember trying to park at that thing. I probably wouldn't be as big as I am if I went to every Salina home game because of all the walking I had to do to get to the stadium. But That game should be good. And I know Salina wants to get their licks back for sure after losing not once but twice. And we're not 100% sure if Jacob Emmers is going to be back. He kind of hinted at it on my show, but Coach Parr hinted that he wasn't going to be back. Maybe it's just a cat and mouse game. I can't imagine him being back just because his foot was just broken in July, I think, late in July. So I can't imagine him being back. But what do you think about that game?
Coaches playing these the DL games, you know, or the IR games. So, you know, that's what I like about the NFL. You got to report that stuff because we don't get to know that. You know, we're going to talk about that in several games in 6A and 5A. Players we just don't have status reports on that are big factors in those games. And Jacob Emmers is obviously a big factor. And I think one of the most surprising scores that I was tracking last week, and I know last week was a weird week with the rain and all kinds of craziness, was that Walnut Grove Salina game. Because I just saw Gunter the week before completely blow out Walnut Grove. That game was 64-24 with, you know, like 40 straight points that Gunter scored against them. And you would think Salina, being a bit of a bigger school, 2 classes bigger, would have handled Walnut Grove pretty easily once you saw that calibration. And that game was Walnut Grove all the way to the end. You know, Salina had to win that game in overtime, and they had to score a miracle 2-minute drive just to get it to overtime to win that game. And Salina, even when you look at that Bishop Lynch game, Bishop Lynch played him good for a half, and Salina really had to accelerate in the third and fourth quarter to make that game look as ugly as it did statistically. But so we talk about style points, and there's 2 kinds of style points. There's the style points where, you know, you're up on them big 42-0, and then there's the style points where you're throwing in the fourth quarter, you know, up 35 because you want the style points to look good even though you haven't earned the style points. And that's what Salina did against Bishop Lynch. Anna, though, with only 2 games, I look at that game against Decatur at the very first week, which let me know their defense isn't fantastic, and Aubrey isn't quite what we thought they were. They haven't scored a point in 2 weeks. You know, they got shut out by Seguin, they got shut out by Anna. So when I look at this offensive battle, I think Salina is going to be able to offensively have success against Anna. Can Anna fire back at Salina without their best wide receiver? I don't think so. I'm taking Salina.
Oh, there we go. I know one thing we're sure about is there's going to be huge crowds at both of those first 2 games, which is why we kind of let off with the small schools, because there are going to be some huge crowds at those games. And I know maybe you know more from your 4-3A report, but I know Brock didn't feel good about the losses they took in the non-district. I know it didn't really matter much to them when it got down to the end of it, but they don't like to be looked as a team that's going to lose big games. They want to win big games. So I know Brock wants to get up there and show people that, hey, we can take down this Gunter team. So that's going to – I'm interested to see how that one turns out as well.
And I think in their head, they feel like this is them punching down. Their first 3 games are punching up to 4A. Now they're punching down to 3A Division II. And this is a Gunter school that only has about half of their enrollment, even though they've got the same kind of football numbers. So I think in their head, they feel entitled that they need to go in there and beat Gunter and make a point that we are the best team in 3A regardless of classification. But Gunter's got that same mindset. I mean, they just whooped a 1,500 student Walnut Grove, I'll call them Pleasant Grove, Prosper Walnut Grove team, and they're not afraid of anybody. People don't want to play them. I don't think Flower Mound wants to play Gunter at this point. And Gunter, I would love to have these dream games where you would see, you know, how great would it be if we had Gunter against Flower Mound? You know, just as a general, you know, one-off kind of a game. You got 3A Division II against 6A, you know, 3,000 students against 350. And I say Flower Mound because I keep talking about in 6A that I think they're the best coached team. And that's the kind of team you have to be able to beat Gunter, because Gunter is incredibly well coached. So, you know, and Brock is a very well coached team as well. But who will be those offensive difference makers for Brock? That's what I don't think they have, and I know Gunter does.
Well, those are going to be 2 exciting games, and they're probably going to lead off the show this weekend. But let's go ahead and dive into 6A. But before we dive into 6A, I got a soapbox I got to get on here and talk about what I've seen these first 3 weeks, and I got to get your opinion on it, man, because it's been driving me crazy of late. You know, it's not a new thing, because we saw this with Jonathan Gray way back in the day. I believe they played Stephenville, where he scored a touchdown and was taunting his way in, and they penalized him from where the taunt was. Yeah, doing that stuff with the finger out pointing. We've seen a ton of this year in the first 3 games, and it drives me nuts because it's cost in Ennis's case, it cost Ennis the game against Waxahachie. One of their players caught one pass and got to about the 30-yard line and started doing the taunting. I believe he was blowing kisses to the crowd. They penalized him from there. They got that 15-yard penalty. Then they got a couple other penalties. They never scored. They lost by 6. Last week, we saw it with Emerson, a player from Emerson taunted his way in. I saw it at my Byron Nelson game. A long, beautiful pass by Van Groot was ruined because the kid started taunting at the 3, dropped him back to the 18. They never did get any more yards, got a field goal. Now, to Coach Pride's credit, I never saw that kid on the field again. So I think he knows what time it is too. But am I going to sound like, old man, get off my lawn? Maybe so. I don't care, because you have your fun, but wait till you get to the sideline. That's what I say. Get in the end zone, give the ball to the ref or slam it down or whatever. Then go tell your crowd how great you are and how you're the best player. Get on the Twitter afterwards and tweet after this DB that's been jawing with you the whole game, saying you're the greatest of all time, because you can ignore that on Twitter. You can ignore that. You can ignore all the social media stuff you want to. What you can't ignore is the lack of 7 points that you just cost your team. That's out there and that's real. And it's happened the 3 times that I've seen already in week 3. It's got to stop, because it's got to drive coaches. And I'm not even blaming the coaches. I know they coach them up saying not to do it. It's just the heat of the moment. It's wild to me that they cannot just score their touchdown and be done with it, and then go, tell all the cheerleaders you're the greatest wide receiver in the history of the world. But don't do it on the field, man. It's costing everybody big. Thoughts?
I think it actually is a little bit of a coaching issue, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a counterpoint here, because in the Pierce Jesuit game I saw, and maybe Touchdown Teddy got this on film. I can't remember if it was first half or second half, but Pierce got a turnover, and they all immediately ran off the field, and they started doing some sort of basketball thing. They set up a basketball goal, and they put on a chain, and then they did this whole kind of thing on the sidelines, and the cheerleaders were part of it. So they had an enormous celebration, but they did it off the field.
Yeah.
So maybe if you set up something where if you're going to score, you know what you're going to get to do off the field, and that's what's in your head, instead of I need to blow a kiss or I need to wave goodbye to somebody. Maybe the fact that the coaches are setting up these elaborate fun things for the kids to do when you score a touchdown on the sidelines keeps them from feeling like they have to do that in the field of play. So to me, maybe that's something that I think, as you saw with the Byron Nelson thing, they're only going to do it once, because you're going to be out of there if you do it again. I don't like the rule, but I understand the rule, and if you know what the rule is, you know what the rule is, and the rule is the rule, and you got to play to the rules, because we are a game of rules, Ward. So I don't like it as well, but it's got to, at the same time, it's like if you get an onside kick, you got to know how to handle that. You got to know the rules with that. These kind of, and this is one of the rules I hate being abused, and I hate when it's happening to Plano East. But when you get that false start about 2:05 left in the game, and now you get to run another 40 seconds because of the rules, because you're not in there, and you basically give up 5 yards for 40 seconds. I hate that rule too. It's like, why don't they should stop the clock and not reward the offensive team? But if you know the rules, you know how you got to play around it. So rules are rules, Ward. So
you got to be
blow a kiss to the coaching staffs and hammer it home a little bit more, because you don't see Carroll doing that. You don't see Highland Park doing that. You don't see these state championship teams. You don't even see Duncanville and DeSoto really doing that, because they know it, but they have the elaborate fun stuff on the sidelines, for their touchdowns. Yeah. So I think that's coaching. So coaches, get it in your head and eliminate these mistakes, boost up these fragile egos so they don't feel like they have to blow a kiss, to get back at their opponent, because they have such a weak self-esteem. Build them up, coaches. Build them up.
I was at the beginning of your little tirade, I was getting a little lost, but you're saying that if the coaches did do more of the sideline stuff, it would keep them from doing it on the field. And I agree with that. Yeah. Put together some sort of fun little thing they can do. I've seen some coaches, offensive lineman gets that pancake block. They come over and they start dumping syrup all over them and stuff. You got that pancake. Maybe they don't dump it over them, but they hold up the maple syrup.
That you imagine just coming out sticky.
A bunch of Lester Hayes out there with syrup on their hands. Yeah, that would be holding every other play the rest of the game. I can't get them off me, coach. The sticky hands.
All of a sudden, we're going to see the MLB meets Texas high school football. They're going to be testing their hands for syrup, for stickiness levels.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get to 3-6A. let's get started here. Boswell's taking on Trinity. Trinity introduced a new running back, and he put up like 357, something like that last week. Josh Bell, not the baseball player from Jesuit who's now on San Diego Padres. This is Josh Bell, the guy who can follow some big-time Tongan offensive linemen for 350 yards. They're taking on a Boswell team that has put up some serious points. This could be a I don't even want it. It's battle for what? Second, third? It's Crawley's been playing some good ball too. So
yeah.
It's a
to me,
playoff
this is 3-4. The loser of this is going to be that fringe team. So if it's Trinity, you're now that fringe team. You're looking at LD Bell week 11 in that big game, and that's important. You're Boswell, then you're looking at can you even make the playoffs? Because Boswell is that great unknown for many reasons. It's like I felt a comfort level with Coach Ab. If I knew Coach Abishon was coaching that team, I knew they were going to be competitive. I knew what we were going to get. This is he's still part of the ISD. He's just now assistant athletic director. But first year coaches, we keep talking about it. But all they've done is just continually prove me wrong. Ty Renfro has come in there and just lit it up. And Colin Dixon, the running back over there at Boswell, has done fantastic things. I like how you said, that Josh Bell kid, I think he got 357 yards. That's a very specific and you're exactly right. He got exactly 357 yards. Only
like that.
By Deontay Dean this past week, who took that personally on Thursday night and had to upstage him, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But Trinity has been ravaged defensively. I had somebody tell me that they thought that they had 7 defensive starters from week 1 to week 3 who were not playing against Flower Mound Marcus, and maybe that came across in that 59-49 instant classic game where neither team could stop each other. And if it weren't for turnovers, maybe Marcus wins that game because Trinity was able to take advantage of a couple of interceptions. So for me, what is Boswell? Because Boswell really hasn't been playing the best competition. Trinity has played great competition against Marcus and against Prosper and Rockwell Heath. So I think Trinity, the experience that Trinity has had in 3 much tougher games, and Boswell just had a game canceled. And I think that's huge because they didn't get any sort of reps. They didn't get any sort of, and we talked about that game last week that we thought Halton would push them a little bit more than we thought. So now that we've got Trinity being pushed 3 times and tasting victory, I think Trinity is going to beat Boswell in a shootout. Give me 56-49 or something, because we know Boswell is going to be able to score. How badly hurt is that defense? That could be a big factor. If they're healthier, I think Trinity might win this game by a couple of touchdowns. But since we're talking about the defensive injuries and we just don't know what we don't know, we have to look at what they did last week. Last week, they are who they are. To me, Boswell's going to be able to put up some points against that defense.
Well, Trinity does win. That puts more emphasis on the Boswell Bell or Boswell will look for games for that last playoff spot. Let's move on to 4-6A. Eaton taking on Keller. Now, Eaton, I talked about a lot about Noah Lugo and how he needed to cut down on his picks, and he's down to 1 this year in 2 games and a half. I don't know if that's a cut down or not. Maybe if you paid the second half, there would have been some more in there, but they've started off 2-1. They take a loss to Hebron, but that game never really finished. Who knows if they could have come back. Doesn't really matter because it was non-district. And they're taking on a Keller team that's looking to try to get that second place spot. So talk to me about this game.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a little hypocritical, Ward, because I like to pick and choose when I'm going to count games and when I'm not going to count games. These weather games, and for the game, it's officially a no contest, so it never happened. Okay. For Eaton and Hebron, but I'm going to count it. I'm going to say it did happen. Okay. But for my pick'em that Brian Gossett did, because I picked Eaton to win, it didn't happen. So that game, no contest, did not happen. 0 out everything. Take my loss away. All is good there. But for me and you, Ward, because you and I are buddies, we're going to count the game because that game was real competition, and Noah Lugo threw 2 interceptions in the first half of that game, setting that team up to be completely behind the 8 ball. So those stats, you're looking at the stats and only seeing 1 interception because they're not officially counting that game. Gotcha. Because you and I are going to count that game. We're going to give them those 2 INTs and now I'm getting worried about Northwest Eaton again. I thought they got some stuff fixed. But now we're seeing that, and all of a sudden, okay, if Hebron's getting 2 picks on you, what's Keller going to do? What's Carroll going to do? What's Timber Creek going to do? That sneaky good defense of them. Northwest Eaton, to me, is right on the fringe of not making the playoffs anymore, and that's going to be huge, as we're going to talk about in 11-6A, for how it calibrates the Division I and Division II, and how it completely changes the whole infrastructure. I think Keller has a really good chance to win this game going away. I'm going to pick them to win comfortably by 10, but this game could get ugly, especially if Noah Lugo is not on his best game. If he is on his best game, I still think Keller is going to win, just because Keller is so efficient offensively. Beckham Robinson is really leaning into his role as the top guy now. He went 8 of 13 for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns, and just an abbreviated game against Odessa. Keller's offense is looking really good right now, and Keller's defense is very opportunistic as far as getting turnovers. You talked about Eaton and their turnover issue, and right now it's like they're having a hard time getting those wide receivers out there. Byron Nelson didn't seem to have this problem last year, but their 2 stud wide receivers, Talon Holmes and Mason Stubb, they're almost non-existent in the stat sheets right now. So I'm a little bit nervous about Eaton even making the playoffs after they looked really good in 7-on-7. So give me Keller to establish themselves as a solid number 3. Now, if Keller loses this game, it's very much like we talked about with Boswell Trinity. This is 3-4 for me anyway. Sometimes things change a little bit as the games get going on. But 3-4, the loser of this game is then at big risk. And District 4-6A has a couple of really good teams. I think Fossil Ridge and Keller Timber Creek are much better teams than we might have thought at the beginning of the year. And when you get a rivalry game, so I think this game is more important for Keller than it is for Eaton, as far as you get a rivalry game. If it's Keller and Fossil Ridge for the last playoff spot, that game just increases the intensity. It increases that vibe, and the same thing with Timber Creek. But if Keller's a solid number 3, I don't know if Eaton versus those teams are going to have that same intensity for a playoff battle, even though the playoff battle will be there, but it's not that same kind of rivalry. So much more important game for Keller, and I think they'll take care of business.
Yeah, good point. And back to Noah a little bit, he needs to have one of those games against one of these Byron Nelson, South Lake Carroll, Keller, Timber Creek, Fossil Ridge, to have a game where it says, okay, this is why he's going to BYU, not because he's mopping the floor with some other Keller Central or something like that. He had a solid game, win or lose, against one of these big ones, and didn't turn the ball over. And that's what I'm looking for. It's, show me why BYU's all over you. So let's move on.
That point you make, so I just want to piggyback on it. I think of Frisco Wakeland, because that's kind of been the same thing with Brennan Meyer, and he had that game finally against Frisco Heritage. Threw for 6 touchdowns and exploded, and all of a sudden, a game we thought was going to be a 50-50 game, they just blew out. That was 42-7. If Noah Lugo is that guy and he's playing at that kind of a high level, he can beat a Keller. He can beat a Keller by 4 touchdowns, and they can help get into that 4th playoff spot against Timber Creek and against Fossil Ridge. So I completely respect your challenge there, and he has that opportunity and he has that talent set. We just need to see it.
Yeah, I bet we'll see it one of these times. I'm sure of it. 5-6A. Let's go move on to that. We got Geyer against Prosper. Geyer is another team you had mentioned about not knowing what's going on with the injuries. They got a quarterback that's hurt in Logan McLaughlin. He didn't make it out of that Lancaster game. He's probably going to be out this week. We don't know for sure. We'll find out. And then they're playing a Prosper team that played around with Trinity, played around too much with Rockwell, and let them come back and beat them. So talk to me about how you think this game is going. At the beginning of the season, we thought maybe it'd be for first or second. McKinney's playing some good ball too, but what do we think about now? I did. You didn't.
We were talking about McKinney. We picked McKinney as our number 1. You've been throwing out this nonsense for a while. This is for first place, Diggs.
This is for first
place.
There's injuries in McKinney.
For D1, D2,
first runner up.
They're not even in the same divisions, most likely. So this game is just an important district game. But I think, as you mentioned, losing Logan McLaughlin is huge for Denton Geyer, because Isaac Harney, we talked about Jackson Arnold and what was going to be his loss. What was going to be his loss's impact to that team. And it didn't look like it was a big impact with Logan McLaughlin stepping in there. Obviously, nobody's Jackson Arnold, but he played admirably. early. And I'm not going to blame the Lancaster Denton Geyer point spread on Isaac in any sort of inability, but only going 7 of 17. That I don't know if that's going to do it. He did have 3 touchdowns, but it was a little bit off, and I think there was just a little bit of that hiccup, which kept that game against Lancaster a little bit closer than maybe the talent would have indicated that game was going to be. And now you got Prosper over here, who's got 2 games now against top tier teams, where Trinity, they let them hang around and they only, they were just the 2-point conversion. If that would have made it, they would be sitting in this game going into 1-2. And then Prosper against Rockwall, they were up against Rockwall 2 scores and let Rockwall coming back. What I'm seeing in that is that Prosper's defense is not an elite level defense that they've been the last few years. Prosper offensively is able to do some things. Nathan Tinbarge has been a name we've talked about several times, and he has been a fantastic quarterback stepping into that role. Leo Angelano has done great in that game against Rockwall. They had 5 different running backs score touchdowns. So it's like, Ward, you could go behind that offensive line and you might be able to score a touchdown, Ward, even with your gout foot. I think you might be able to score a touchdown with Prosper's offensive line being a fantastic, one of the best units in the state of Texas. Now, how is that going to work against Denton? Geyer's got one of the best front sevens. That's going to be a fascinating battle, because you got Geyer's front 7 against Prosper's top 5. Who is going to emerge from that battle? And then will Denton Geyer be able to have enough offensively to take advantage of that? For me, the answer is yes to both. I think Denton Geyer is going to beat Prosper. They might beat up Prosper. I think Denton Geyer, and if they have Logan McLaughlin in there, I say he's worth at least 1 touchdown. So I think Denton Geyer wins by 10 without him, and wins by 17 if he is able to play. But they're still trying to figure out their identity running the ball and catching the ball, because they've got so many good, talented players. They don't have that one player they can look at like Nathan Tinbarge has been for Prosper, who has been able to throw the ball and run the ball and get able to find the end zone. But I think Denton Geyer is a much better team than Prosper, just size-wise, and they've got more depth than them. And even though they've lost their quarterback, I think that depth will shine against Prosper this week.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing about Geyer. I thought they just had Josiah Martin, the Boston College commit, as the receiver, but they've got 3 or 4 guys in there, plus a tight end Ted was talking about in our preseason deal. It's just a freshman or sophomore. So they got the talent there to do some things. Now we got another 5-6A game that you're calling an elimination game. Rock Hill versus Braswell. And I'd hate to put you on the spot here and say that you're calling an elimination game, because what I saw from Braswell last week eliminated him in my mind already. You're going to tell me, because Byron Nelson's got 9-10 returning defensive players and they're just swarming. I'm going to tell you that they didn't even attempt to pass, because I don't think their quarterback's the best passer in the game. They like to run more, and you can shut down the run, you can shut them down. And firsthand what's going on with Rock Hill, because they smacked you in the face, you personally.
Me personally, I was feeling that. I know you. I know you as a Commanders fan probably were not watching the Cowboys and Giants last night, but we got to the blowout stage where you're seeing kind of the college game day stuff where they're putting people on the fans who are just like, got the face palms or sad and crying because their team is getting faulted up on national TV, and that's exactly what I felt like. That Prosper Rock Hill playing the East game. I'm just sitting there like, you know what? I thought we were going to win this game. It's 42-0 right now, and I don't really know what happened right here. This is an 0-2 team that's just completely just manhandling us right now. And I was talking to Coach Benedetto before the game, and he was telling me, do not sleep on Rock Hill. Yeah, they're 0-2, but Justin Northwest and Keller Timber Creek are very good teams. We're watching the tape. This is a very good team. They've only lost by 7 points to each of those teams. And then I start to calibrate it, because I've got all my friends in Aledo who are watching Aledo just beat Justin Northwest and saying Justin Northwest is a little bit better than we thought. We should have been beating Justin Northwest more than we did. So to me, that elevates Justin Northwest. We know what Timber Creek's got. Timber Creek and Coppell, that was a game that if that went 48 minutes, I called it one of my upsets of the week last week, but we never got to see it finish. So Rock Hill is a really, really good team. Victor Chianoma is a fantastic running back. He had 19 carries for 147 yards and 3 touchdowns. Christian Lewis is, kind of reminds me of Jack Fishpaw from Coppell, 5'8", 5'9", kind of a kid, but knows that offense just intimately to where he can get it to all of his players, that they're well coached over at Rock Hill. So now we got Rock Hill, who's finally got this big win against Braswell, who's on the low after Byron Nelson. I think Rock Hill, for me, I have all these thoughts that are going into my head. If you keep calling Prosper and Denton Geyer for number 1, I think Prosper and Allen are going to be playing for 3-4. And if Allen can beat Prosper, now we got maybe Prosper versus Rock Hill. And Rock Hill is that kind of that sleeping giant. And they lost Sperry, and nobody's thinking about them. And if Prosper messes around and drops that to where Rock Hill is for a playoff spot, that's going to be an amazing atmosphere over there, and it very well could happen. I know Prosper in their head is thinking, we're going back to the regional finals, we're going back to the state semifinals. It's not that team. So Rock Hill beats Braswell, and watch out for Rock Hill versus Prosper, because Rock Hill has maintained a little bit more depth than I thought they did.
When do you have on offhand when that Rock Hill Prosper game is? Is it later in the year? 11?
It's coming up a little. It's coming up a little bit earlier. I remember seeing their schedule, and they call it the Battle of Prosper.
Okay.
With all due respect to Walnut Grove. So see, I told you, you're going to get to see Prosper plenty more. Don't worry about seeing Prosper.
All right. Let's move on.
Okay.
Let's move to 6-6A, where we have a bye week for that district, but once it starts district play, it sure looks like it's going to be fun, man. Let me break it down for me.
This is, I keep talking about this. I got to see 30 seconds of football, even though our friend Carl Padilla told me I can't catch it as a game that I watched. I went and go watch Plano West against McKinney Boyd as they restarted. It was 52 seconds left in the game, and then went to overtime, and McKinney Boyd won that game in overtime. Plano West, is still very well coached, but size-wise, after seeing Capel and seeing Marcus and a couple of the other teams, seeing Plano East, I think Plano West is going to struggle, but I think they're the only team that's going to struggle. They won't struggle against Louisville. They'll probably beat Louisville, but everybody else in this district struggle with. So I think when you break down this district, Flower Mound is playing, above their grade. Capel plays up and down to just about everybody in the district. Hebron is a turnover generating machine, and when they get the turnovers, they can beat anybody. But when it doesn't go their way, like we saw against Wiley, they struggle a little bit. But they beat Jesuit, they beat Eaton when they get the turnovers. When they don't, they lose to Wiley. So who is Hebron? We got to figure that out. Marcus, offensively, they look like they figured some things out this past week. Plano is showing a little bit of a big play offense. Plano East, when they're healthy, they're very good. They're struggling with some offensive and defensive depth right now, and that contributed to their loss against Rock Hill. And Louisville, now that Louisville is looking at things like, we only lost to Highland Park, so everything is okay. But now you look at what happened to Highland Park this past week. I think this is a very fun district. I think from 2 to 7, everybody is within 1 or 2 touchdowns of each other on paper. So I think every game is going to be a battle. Each and every week going to come down to coaching, schematics, and in this district, it's really a lot to do with health. And I think whoever stays the healthiest might have a chance to do well. Jake Watson, if he goes down for Flower Mound, it's like, you're done, and Plano East, like they lost their running back. You saw that against Plano last year, and they were done. Everybody's got 1 or 2 players that, they got to keep those kids healthy. So it'll be, it'll be a war of attrition in this district, but it's going to be fun to watch. And we will talk about it every single week here on the Plano East podcast.
Don't change the name on me, Diggs. Not until we already got this
it's
thing
now
calculated.
The PEP podcast, the Plano East podcast. We're having pep rallies up here, Ward.
We got this thing copyrighted already, so we're digging for wisdom. You leave that thing out of it. Hebron's the one that I'm concerned about, because to me they just feel so inconsistent. And you brought up with the turnovers, man. You literally don't know what to expect each week. Whereas Marcus, like you said, you always expect them to put up 40 points and give up maybe 41 or 39. It depends whether they're going to win or lose. But you mentioned the fact that Hebron did beat Jesuit. That brings us up to 7-6A. Jesuit against Lake Highlands. We left Lake Highlands for dead. Somebody came and breathed life into them, and they went in there and put their foot somewhere in Highland Park to the point where they had to finish it in a couple of days, and they still got beat. What's going on over there in 7-6A, Diggsy?
I bet $1 that our podcast was played in that locker room.
Yeah.
I bet that you talked about, we had the funeral last week. We just said good night to Lake Highlands. Maybe them against Berkner was for the last playoff spot. We could see Lake Highlands not even making the playoffs. And Ward, they went Michael Jordan on us, and they took that personally. And what they did against Highland Park was, with a new coach, it had to be one of the best psychological motivation jobs. I can only imagine that coach in there saying, this, our guy, Lonnie Jordan, he left us to go there. He thought they were better than us. He thought they were the place he should go retire. Yeah, and man, Deontay Dean just had a lights out thing. And if you remember when we were having our post-mortem about the Louisville versus Highland Park game, we talked extensively that many thought that Louisville missed an opportunity to run down Highland Park's throat. That they had that opportunity and they inexplicably didn't do it. And we talked about some of the reasons why that would be. And now Deontay Dean, he did that. Lake Highlands offensively in their scheme, they did that. And one of the best stat lines, Deontay Dean, 31 carries for 376 yards and 4 touchdowns. That opened up Trip Holly. And I don't think I've ever seen a program that had trip to trip. Trip Marshall had 5 receptions for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns. We have Trip Holly. We have Trip Marshall. We got Trip Wizzy over here who's doing the podcast and giving them motivation. And all of a sudden, now Lake Highlands is sitting at the top of this district looking at Jesuit, who is the cardiac kids. Jesuit has played 3 straight games, 1 score, last play of the game kind of games. What are we going to get here? I think we're going to get a highly contested 4-quarter game that's going to go down to the last minute. But at the end of the day, I think Jesuit is going to upset Lake Highlands and get that game back against Lake Highlands, because I think they're not going to stay up at that high level. Now, apologies to my friends in Jesuit who now just had another podcast piped into the Lake Highlands locker room, who is like, this Diggs guy says we can't do this again.
We will do it.
We're going to go do it. No, you're not.
Boy. Man, oh days.
Jesuit.
Tell me when somebody ran 376 in Highland Park, even when they were at their.
Never happened. I'm going to say it's never happened.
Never happened. That is, and you even mentioned it last week. Dean had, and I say this because that's my son's name, Dean had a heck of a game against Flower Mound, and they ended up losing. He still got over 200. He's at 800 for the season. That's 3 games. I ain't doing the math, but that's 2,400 after however many games, 9 games. So he's on his way, man. He's on his way to
4,000 yards after 16 games. Because we just said Lake Highlands, or we said Highland Park's going to win the state championship now, and now Lake Highlands going to win the state championship. So Deontay Dean, 4,200 yards, 16 games, taken out Duncan.
Unbelievable. 35 touchdowns. Oh, thanks for picking me up on there because I couldn't do the math. You just jumped right in with the 4,200 yards.
I'm your math guy, Ward.
All right, what about Berkner and Pierce? That looks like for the last spot, wouldn't you say, or no?
At this point, we may see middle-of-the-road chaos because if Jesuit now beats Lake Highlands, now we're going to have tiebreakers and all kinds of crazy stuff. If Lake Highlands stays, at the top and ends up winning district undefeated, then this could very well be. But you know what I saw in that Berkner versus Richardson game? I saw all the studs in
the box score. There you go.
In the box score there. Cornell McGee back at quarterback. Jamari Williams, 14 carries, 173 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But you know what I did not see, Ward? Damian Crow has yet to make an impact this year. He is like just, he's in the stat line. He's catching 1 ball for 3 yards. But you would think a kid who is being offered by OU and other places would have that light switch come on. It's like something is a little bit weird there. Like he hasn't found that chemistry. And what better way to introduce himself to the state in a big rivalry game against Richardson Pierce, where now we've got another podcast streaming into the 7-6A locker room, as Damian Crow has been called out by the DFW podcast as a non-factor. How is Coach Bryant going to get him in the game and make him, he's going to do it this week? I think Berkner, I put him number 25. They made me feel bad for a week or so. Lost to McKinney. I think they're gonna. I'm not gonna rank them, but I do think they're gonna get back and beating a ranked Pierce. I think Pierce is ranked number 25 this week. So this is the battle for 25 we talked about at the very beginning. Ward, give me those Berkner Rams.
There we go. Oh, here we go.
Give me those Berkner Rams.
He's got it going on.
Let's go, Rams.
And you said during the offseason you might show up at that game, the big game against Lake Highlands, help them change the name of the stadium if it needs to be changed. You got to stick with that. You got to go to that. On a Friday.
Friday night.
They expect to see you there, but you won't be there. So that's all right.
They probably expect to see me there this Thursday, but I'm going to Frisco. I know we're not 5A yet, but there's some quality football going on.
Absolutely. All right. You spoke on quality football, and then we go to 8-6A. So I don't know if those two words go together, but Martin is scoring some points. They got more than 2. They got more than 13. They got 31. They still haven't got the win, though, yet. But talk to me about that district and how Martin's finally getting some points going on.
Yeah, but we're up to 3 wins now, so that's we're getting there. You know, we're 3-18 now in our 21 games. So District 8-6A is struggling, but I feel like they figured out a little something against Allen offensively in that second half. And you know, obviously losing their quarterback the very first game, you know, that was kind of their guy, and now the new guys are getting experience and figuring it out. Martin's going to be fine by the end. By week 11, we're probably going to be looking at Martin as still an undefeated team in this district. But you know, they're going to be playing Temple this week. I think Temple is still going to help with their growing pains, even though Temple is only 1-2. Their win was against McKinney Boyd, and I think Arlington Martin and McKinney Boyd are probably very similar right about now. Temple can score some points too, so I think Temple will take care of Arlington Martin this week. But Arlington Martin, I'm seeing that improvement, and that's what we talked about last week. We wanted to see that improvement from each week, and it wasn't, you know, if Allen would have beat them 42-0 or something like that, I would have been very worried. But they are getting better, and I'm starting to see Coach Rivas get his identity in there, and you know, just in time for district. Yeah,
that's the key right there at the end. Get that thing going right when district play happens, because everybody in your district's struggling too, and that's the way to make some hay. Get yourself a win, and then get yourself a district title, and then maybe face a Berkner, Pierce, or Jesuit, or Lake Highlands, or whoever ends up 4th in Division 1. Who knows? But we'll figure it out as we go along. Let's move to 9-6A. We got Saxe against Rowlett. Talk to me about Saxe. They had an impressive win over Lakeview Centennial. Boy, we're giving Lake Highlands some more material. They don't even know what district we're in, right? How are they going to say it?
We're putting them in 7-6A. We got them in 9-6A. We might even send them out to Frisco Lake Highlands.
But that Saxe went over Lakeview Centennial. If you watch Teddy Ballgame's highlights, it very well could have been a shutout, because the touchdown for Lakeview should have been picked off, but he tipped it in the guy's hands for a touchdown. Is Saxe finding some things and ready to do something against Rowlett? I mean, where did they rank now?
I think they figured out they've got the best receiver in this district in Khalid Lockett, and maybe we need to throw to this guy, and maybe we need to base our offense around him. And then you might be thinking to yourself, okay, I'm the defensive coordinator looking at Saxe now. You know, let's double cover this guy. What did we get introduced to against Lakeview Centennial? A second option in Kendrick Hanks, who can take that pressure off of Khalid Lockett, and all of a sudden now you got a team that is an offensive juggernaut. Brendan George looked great against Lakeview Centennial. It took them to that second half, but it's like they're starting to figure it out too. We talked about Martin starting to figure out in the second half. So Saxe, for me, they gotta go to those players. You know, they've got a big offensive line. You know, and the tendency might be to try to run behind them, but let Brendan George cook. You know, get Khalid Lockett out there. Let him make plays, because he is your best playmaker. Rowlett, Andrew Ellison is their playmaker at quarterback. And last week against Naaman Forest, we talked about the Plano East Bowl, and I picked Naaman Forest. And again, they felt a little disrespected by that. They're like, we are the better team to lose to Plano East. And they showed it, and they dominated Naaman Forest. So to me, this used to be the big rivalry in Garland ISD. When you had Saxe and Rowlett, you were sending camera crews back to that game back in the day. And now you don't even want to talk about it on the podcast. I had to guilt you off air and said, Ward, we're going to talk about Saxe and Rowlett whether you want to or not. We just can't talk about Wiley and Wiley East every single week, and you're disrespectful at the mouth. And we're going to talk about another Garland ISD game afterward because I wrote it on the format. And if you ignore it, I'm not going to let you go to 10-6A until we talk about that second game. I will hijack it. You'll talk about South Grand Prairie, and I'll say South who? Oh, we're going back. We're going to talk about Garland, back to Garland here. But I think Saxe wins a very competitive, high-scoring game. Give me 42-28 over Rowlett.
Excellent. And moving on to 10-6A.
Rockwall against South Grand Prairie, and the two words of SGP is SG. And when we talk about SG, we can also talk about South Garland. Remember the Titans, Ward, because they're no longer the Colonels. Remember the Titans.
Right. They are the Titans. Taking on North.
Right here on the PEP podcast, the Pep Rally podcast, the DFW podcast, South Garland wins their first district game in years over North Garland. Let's go Titans.
Oh, wow.
I'm fired up. Pull this clip, Ward.
He is
South Garland winning. Put that on TikTok.
Put it out there, man. We're TikTok.
Put it out there. South Garland.
They're getting a big win here in honor of old coach Rodney Webb. They're getting a big win. All right. Speaking of Rodney Webb, we're moving to 10-6A. Can we do that? We're doing it. Rockwall SGP.
He's not even the coach at Rockwall anymore. What are you talking about? We can't talk about Rodney Webb.
Let's talk about Rockwall.
I want to talk about Heath.
What
I don't like Heath anymore.
Why don't you like Heath anymore? So I can pull this.
Just saying.
I
don't like teams that lose.
Oh boy. Well, then you must have trouble with Plano East because they lost last week.
Plano East and Rockwall Heath have the same record, sir. Just look it up.
One loss.
Yeah. That's it.
You hate Heath and you don't hate Pesh.
They shouldn't have beat Euless Trinity. I'm a little bit bitter about that. Trinity should have beat Rockwall.
Boy, you were riled up. We are riled up. You must have had some community coffee. A proud sponsor of Inside High School Sports. Whatever that is not a proud sponsor. It looks like you're going in and out like a burger. All right, talk to me about Rockwall against SGP, my guy, because SGP is part of the 3-18 district. And if it's anything like last year, they just had trouble winning in the non-district, and the beginning of the district play also is what I meant to say. And they're taking a Rockwall team that came back to beat Prosper and get that big W for them. What's your thoughts on this? Because they're going to be in the district play after in a little bit.
Could you imagine if we just had 10 games of Rockwall and Jesuit playing each other, just what kind of heart condition we would have with that, just back and forth, left and right kind of a format. Right. I had somebody at Rockwall tell me, they're like, Diggs, I don't think you're giving our defense enough credit. I'm like, you've averaged giving up 50 points a game the last 2 weeks. What kind of defensive credit do you want for this? I mean, when you're averaging giving up a half 100, but our defense is better than we thought. It was Cedar Hill week 1. I mean, you can't be hanging your hat on that. I like Cedar Hill. We'll talk about that next. But you can't be hanging your hat on that one game anymore. You got to stop somebody when it matters. Somebody who's got some offensive consistency and an offensive identity. Because we know from the biggest growth is from week 1 to week 2. Cedar Hill's got it figured it out. Well, again, we'll talk about that. I want to bury the lead there because we want to talk about SGP. And I think SGP is figuring it out a little bit too. Jaden Stanley had a great game against Mansfield. And we talked about Mansfield last week, and they shut down Mansfield Summit in the second half. Now it seems like everybody's shutting down Mansfield Summit now. It's like Mansfield figured it out, put the blueprint out there, and now everybody's taking advantage of it. But Jaden Stanley, 20 of 30, 252 yards and 4 touchdowns. That to me against a talented third tier or third seed Mansfield said, I think South Grand Prairie is figuring it out in their losses, and that's what they did last year. Rockwall, I mean, their offensive, I started to see Ward, what my brain is saying is I think they're getting away from that 2 quarterback rotation. It looks like it's a 67-33 split now, and maybe we'll finally kind of get that over to the 80-20, 90-10 or something there. But Landon Locke is throwing the ball about 67% of the time now. And I've seen this now for a couple of weeks. So I have hope that Rockwall is getting away from this wretched 2-quarterback system. But I think Rockwall will make a statement against South Grand Prairie. But again, now that we're seeing South Grand Prairie improve offensively, and now we know that Rockwall's defense isn't what we thought it was after that Cedar Hill game, I think, again, we're going to see a potential shootout. But I think Rockwall will win a 56-28 kind of game.
Maybe that's what the non-district is for, to figure out which is the quarterback they want to lead in the district play. Boy, I'm interested to hear what you think about Oklahoma State. They run a 3-quarterback system. That must really drive you nuts. But 2 of them are DFW guys. So how about that?
How about Ollie Gordon? Let's just talk about that, and what a special player he is.
I saw an Ollie Gordon. Well, we'll get into it in 5A. So let's talk more about Mesquite Horn and their game against Tyler last week. They lost at Tyler. It's probably not one that they felt like they should have lost going into it, but they did. Can they get a bounce back against a team from 8-6A?
Yeah, I think they're going to bounce back against Arlington, but I think what we saw with Mesquite Horn, we thought Mesquite Horn could compete for the #1 seed, and I think they can compete for the #1 seed, but they are just too inconsistent. I think you're going to have 3 teams, the top 3 teams in Rockwall, Heath, Rockwall, and Mesquite Horn all have their little bit of inconsistencies. For Rockwall, it's defensively. For Heath, I think it's just talent. I think Webb has them playing at their peak level. I just don't think they have the talent to play to that level. So if Rockwall and Mesquite Horn, match them at their level, I think Rockwall Heath has a good chance in either of those games against them. So Mesquite Horn told me that they're not ready for prime time yet, and I think as that relates to an extended playoff run, I'm a little bit nervous about Mesquite Horn now, given that Tyler High beat them the way they did. And again, to me, that speaks to 7-5A's incredible depth down there. That district is 6 strong as well, kind of what we're talking about with the Keller district being 6 strong. I think Mesquite Horn will bounce back against Arlington, but a lot of that shine on that Diamond Ward is it's a little scuffy now for me and Mesquite Horn. So the Legend may prove me wrong by the end of the season, Legend Bay, but I'm a little bit nervous about Mesquite Horn now, Ward. I don't have that warm fuzzy feeling like I do for you.
Oh my God,
man!
I really appreciate it. Put that in a card and send it to me. I would love to save it for.
Really should. Like I love you more than Mesquite Horn, Ward. That's a Christmas card waiting to happen.
I'll take that as a compliment. I'm calling up Hallmark, see if they can get that thing made.
Coach Allen, prove me wrong. But I mean, it is what it is. I mean, that was a stinker, and right. Granted, you want to have those stinkers in non-district, but it was not good.
He's going to take that to the locker room. Put a big picture of me
Probably
up. He likes this 3-chin humongous guy over our team. This is ridiculous. The Wizord? No, you can't possibly like him like that. Let's move to 11-6A because we have this every once in a while where there's a game that starts off district play that we already know in our heads is for that 4th spot. And that's what's happening with Cedar Hill and Waxahachie. What do you think goes on? Because it's a Cedar Hill home game. They've proven they can score, but they've also proven against the talented defense, and Rockwall told you that they're having talented defense. They can't score. So what happens in this game? And then after you tell me what's going to happen, what are the repercussions, the rest of the fallout of the rest of the district?
Well, it's got some fallback, but I wanted to dig into this Cedar Hill versus South Lake Carroll game because, I go to the morning news and they have great stats, and I look at that and I see they got 343 yards against South Lake Carroll. And Carroll only had 398 yards. Carroll has been had 70 and then 50, and then they only had 30 in this game, and it went all 4 quarters. So it wasn't like a situation where, this was just a halftime score. And then I looked at what Cedar Hill did drive by drive. And the very first drive, they went 9 plays, 75 yards, and ended up, getting no points out of it, getting stuffed on 4th down. Then they went 10 plays, 41 yards, and had an interception. 18 plays, 39 yards, no points. 9 plays, 24 yards, no points. It's 24-0 in the 4th quarter. You got first teamers still playing. Then they go 9 plays for 28 yards. They have a fumble. Carroll returns it for a touchdown. Now it's 31-0, and it's starting to get out of hand. And then they finally answer back in the fourth quarter and get that first touchdown of that game. So what that showed me was they were able to control the pace of that game with their running game, third down conversions, able to consistently get 3-4 yards. I mean, it's not pretty when you hear 10 plays, 41 yards, but you know what that average is, Ward? 4 yards a play. You know what happens if you get 4 yards a play? You get first down every single time. Waxahachie, this is a team that should have lost to Ennis, as you talked about, barely beat Arlington Lamar and beat up Grand Prairie, but you know everybody's been beating up Grand Prairie lately. So I think we are going to see the Cedar Hill Longhorns and Coach Nick Ward beat Waxahachie. Now, that's not a guarantee that they're going to make the playoffs, but it sure makes it a lot easier to make the playoffs when you have that game in hand over Waxahachie. And then you put that game at home. That is important. So what does that do, Ward? That pushes Cedar Hill to Division II, Mansfield Division II, DeSoto Division I, Duncanville Division I. Now you've got potentially DeSoto and Duncanville, who are, you know, in the past, that game has been a game where it's fun, but you can still both win state championships. You're both in Division I. Somebody's not winning a state championship. You're probably playing twice now, and that's going to be really fun if that happens. So me personally, I'm cheering. I'm sorry, Waxahachie. You know, I got a good friend over there, Coach Terrell. I'm sorry, Coach Terrell. I'm sorry, Tollison. Coach Hennigan, I'm still mad at you from last week. I know he's part of your tree, but I'm mad at all of you Denton Ryan people. We'll talk about that coming up next. We are going to see Cedar Hill. Get those Longhorns on. Get the Longhorns on. We're going, baby. DeSoto Duncanville, fourth round of the playoffs. Let's go.
This dude is riled up. Hey, look, before we move on, I got to run that math back to me. Run your stat sheet, because I heard you say 18 plays for 39 yards.
That's right.
How is that possible? Is that penalty ridden? Penalties all over the place.
Go back and forth.
Holy cow. That must have been a brutal drive.
Play 39 yards. That is how you grind it out. That is like 7 minutes of clock right there.
That must have been a brutal drive.
Waxahachie is going home, and they're going to go home sad.
All right, I need
it
you
is Cedar Hill time in the Metroplex.
To get them back in the postseason.
Cedar Hill is going to give a gift to the whole Metroplex, 2 Duncanville and DeSoto games. That's what they're
courtesy of the Longhorns. TTHS.
Courtesy of the Longhorns.
Turn them loose. All right.
Hook 'em horns, baby.
You said you wanted to talk about Denton Ryan. Well, we've moved on to 3-5A. Talk about them. Let them know they took them a couple days to beat Azle, though they beat the pants off them the first night, and then they just finished them off Saturday. But now Azle's playing Aledo this week. You say there's calibration there. Talk to me about it. Talk to me. Hennigan's listening.
Well, you know, Ward, we were a little bit sad because we just had no data on Denton Ryan, because, you know, they played New Braunfels and the morning news wasn't really going to cover that very well. Then they didn't play anybody last week because they were scared to play people. So now we finally get a chance to really see, okay, you know, the morning news can teach me a little bit about Denton Ryan. And we talked about in the campfire and the district breakdown that we thought Braden Mussett was going to be the quarterback, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm Googling on Twitter. Can you Google on Twitter? Because those are two things that are not even there anymore. It's like X.
Search on it. Yeah,
searching on X instead of Googling on Twitter, things that you don't there. And, you know, and leave it to Inside High School Sports in 2021 to have a tweet that said Braden Mussett throws for 220 yards as Frisco Memorial beats somebody. So I guess he was a Frisco Memorial guy and he moved over to Denton Ryan. But TJ Hobbs is that guy now for Cedar Hill. So they moved Braden Mussett over They moved Braden Mussett over to running or wide receiver. TJ Hobbs is now the quarterback, and they look like they got great chemistry. So Braden Mussett took a move over there for the team because he's a fantastic athlete. athlete. TJ Hobbs scored, went 19 for 32 for 237 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was an Olin Catholic guy last year, and now he's over at Denton Ryan. So they're getting all the transfers over there at Denton Ryan. You know, if you try to figure out what you want to do, you know, you can transfer over to Denton Ryan. And they look great. You know, their offensive line was really talented. They were pretty much able to average 6 yards a rush against Azle. So I'm going to be fascinated to see how Aledo beats Azle, because Denton Ryan looks to be a team this year that's sneaky good and sneaky dangerous. And they might have the talent, hashtag still Ryan, even though they're hashtag avoiding other teams, they might be hashtag still Ryan more than we think.
Right. And speaking of Ryan, I hate to bring it to the college game, but boy, those two Ryan grads have a great game for Texas against Alabama. I mean, Jatavian Sanders looks like a pro, and Anthony Hill looks like a pro after just, you know, it's only his second game playing, and he was just dominating Alabama. Let's move on to 4-5A. Man, oh days, did we have a doozy of a game between Red Oak and Lake Belton. That was fun to watch the highlights. Then I was just relaxing on a Friday afternoon. The game came on again, and I took a look at it again. I let you know about it so you could at least see the back end of it. What a play by Reggie Moody. He really stepped up as their quarterback. What a dual threat. He got it to that high-powered Taz Williams, and then on the final play, he just let it happen. Now, I know they have extra point issues that we may have to talk about, but to get that win at Lake Belton on national TV, that's impressive.
Yeah, and they lost to Lake Belton last year in overtime by 1, and this year they were able to run it back. I don't like when you have to play that style of football, Ward. It's kind of like Frisco Reedy from last year, you know, just that crazy finishes, 4th and 20 at one point, you know, where you're needing all kinds of crazy, you know, personal fouls and missed extra points. It's just sloppy, and I don't like it for this district. But give Red Oak credit. They game against a very good Lake Belton team, and they went to their house and they did it on national TV. Just watching that game, you know, the to win the game, you know, they had to get a miracle play, and then in overtime they had a miracle play after mistake, and that kind of sloppiness is not going to lend you well to a playoff run, because you do that to Aledo, it ain't going to work, you know. Right. And Red Oak has enough talent to where they can play with good teams, but this district, the top half of the district, and you're even joking to me, you're like, Diggs, you've been so wrong on this district. I bet Midlothian is gonna beat Shoemaker by 2 scores now, because you are just so wrong after watching that. And then what happens? Colleen Shoemaker loses by 2 scores to Midlothian, and now the DFW schools are back, and now we have a game that you don't even want to talk about, Ward, but I'm going to segue into talking about Colleen Shoemaker versus Lake Belton, our DFW Inside High School Sports Game of the Week.
Our outskirts game of somewhat
Lake Belton.
Our DFW outskirts somewhat interesting game of the week. Go ahead, Diggs.
Inside High School Sports Game of the Week. It's like we got Gunter, we got Brock, Big Country Game of the Week, and now we're going to have Colleen Shoemaker and Lake Belton, we'll just call it our 4-5A Game of the Week.
Our Waco Game of the Week.
Our Waco, or our Super Syntax Game of the Week.
Yeah, Super Syntax. Let's do that.
There you go.
Are you done talking about those two? Because I'm done hearing about them. Yeah, I want to hear about DFW teams, and there is
Colleen Shoemaker actually had a really good performance against Midlothian. I mean, Malachi Jerome, the kid we talked about, the quarterback for Colleen Shoemaker, who is a difference maker, went 13 of 26 for 189 yards and a touchdown. He ran the ball 8 times for 44 yards and a touchdown against Midlothian. That game, even though it was 2 scores, we had extra point issues there. So it was 5 touchdowns against 4 touchdowns, but, you know, it ended up being 2 scores. Brandon Brown Jr., the really talented running back for Colleen Shoemaker, has found his way onto the stat sheet. He ran the ball 14 times for 104 yards and 2 touchdowns and 391 yards for the game for Colleen Shoemaker. I think it's going to be another shootout, kind of a crazy game this week, very much like the Red Oak and Lake Belton game. But I think Lake Belton just has a little bit more talent, and they are learning from these games. And surely the craziness can't happen 2 straight weeks. Give me Lake Belton to bounce back.
It can happen, and do not call me Shirley. All right, let's move on to 5-5A, where DFW teams reign all over that district, including a Newman Smith team that we've propped up since campfire days. And they're getting a chance to prove that they are what we say they are. They got a game on the road at Birdville. I think Newman Smith wins. I think you might as well, but I don't like to put words in your mouth. So you tell me what you think.
You know, Birdville almost reminds me in a scary way of Prosper Rock Hill. And what I mean by that is that, you know, they were blown out by Crowley, and all of a sudden Crowley's now 3-0 and they blew out Mansfield Summit. So what does that really tell us? You know, losing to Crowley may not be such a bad thing. Then they lost to Garland by 1 point. And, you know, you had written off Garland after losing to McKinney North. You said you're done with Garland, out of there. And now Garland beats North Garland last week by 5 touchdowns. So maybe Garland, it might be a 6A playoff team. And Newman, so Birdville scares me because there's just a lot of unknowns right here. And Noah Normand is a fantastic quarterback. We've seen him for a couple of years now, it feels like. He went 8 of 13 for 267 yards and 4 touchdowns against R.L. Turner. And they got a good running back in Jalen Davis, who ran the ball 13 times on 141 yards. But Birdville just doesn't look like they can stop the run. And what does Newman Smith do? They've got 3 running backs who can all tote the rock with Pearson Rougeau and Chris Hughes and Jaden Coulter. And Pearson Rougeau, if you load up the box too much, he can make you pay for it with a deep ball. I think it is going to be a defining win for Newman Smith, but give me Newman Smith over Birdville, like you, Ward.
I like it. We got a camera out at that one too. We also have a camera out at 6-5A game. Frisco Wakeland, Frisco Reedy. One of the main reasons it's supposed to rain on Thursday, and this game's indoors. So I think both me and you will be there to keep dry and see a sweet game. Before we talk about
what can I bring you, Ward? Because last time we were at the Star, you asked me to bring you credentials, and I delivered. So what can I bring you this week, Ward? How can I reward your loyalty to the Texas High School?
I'm going to think about it, and I'm going to hit you at the end of this podcast.
Would you like some toothpicks? Would you like a box of toothpicks?
Yeah, give me a box of toothpicks, because this one I've been working on for several weeks. No,
I've got you, Ward.
That would be disgusting if I did that. Before we talk about Reedy and Wakeland, man, that Reedy Lone Star game was another sweet one. Boy, we almost pulled out some more Reedy magic. I thought for sure it was going to happen. You saw in my DMs that I thought for sure. I can't believe Coach Cole did again. Coach Cole calls me his good luck charm, or he did until 7 seconds left in that game. Then he didn't anymore, and he's done with me. But I wanted to talk about Lone Star because of Davion Gross, and we mentioned Ollie Gordon. If that is not a clone of Ollie Gordon, I don't know what is. I got to give Stephen Peters credit for that. Slow, decisive moves, the kind of energy. It doesn't look like he's really moving fast, but he's in the end zone. He gets the ball. He's long. He stands up straight when he runs. Everything that Ollie Gordon did is what Davion Gross is doing at running back position. He was something else. He got 187 yards, but Reedy almost pulled it out, and now they got themselves a loss. It's been several district games since they've seen something in the L column, and now they're taking on a Wakeland team that has got all kinds of confidence because Brennan Meyer threw that ball, like you said earlier, all over the place and only had to play a little more than the half before that thing was done with, and he could go relax for a while.
Yeah, it's like Wakeland has turned that light switch on. So now we have a fascinating game with Reedy versus Wakeland. Reedy, showed me that their defense isn't quite what people thought they were, but their offense is way ahead of what I thought it was going to be. Because the question I think going into it was their defense is going to be fine, their offensive line is going to be fine, but who is going to be that quarterback and running back who's going to be able to put up the yards? And now that looks like they got 2 quarterbacks. I don't like that going on. My feelings on that. But Tristan Airy ran the ball 16 times for 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. So they got that kid who can get them tough yards and can provide explosiveness for Frisco Reedy. I think Frisco Wakeland, though, you got the best player on the field when you have Brennan Meyer. But Reedy is a ball hawking defense. So do we see the Noah Lugo, Brennan Meyer multiple turnover version of that? Reedy wins. If Brennan Meyer plays like he did against Heritage, I think we're going to see Frisco Wakeland in this game. I think Meyer's feeling it after last week. He's starting to develop that chemistry with Ashton Cahooch, Cooper Snyder.
Yeah, that's my favorite name, Cahooch.
Donovan Woolen had a big game for Frisco Wakeland, 8 catches for 104 yards. The running game, though, for Wakeland is a big unknown. They had 32 yards only 107 or 32 runs, only 107 yards, and they won the turnover battle by 4 against Frisco Heritage. So that kind of offset things. But obviously, it doesn't matter how many turnovers. When Brennan Meyer throws for 6 touchdowns in the first half, you're going to be okay. Can he do that one more week? I'm going to say yes. I think it might be for some a bit of an upset, but I'm going to take Wakeland over Reedy this week because I promised y'all on the campfire that Reedy was going to be down. So 2 straight losses in district makes the Digs look a little bit better than I've looked so far.
Yeah, you pretty much have to take Wakeland after all that stuff you were talking during the summer.
Kind of
right?
do. Kind of do.
All right, before I hit the Wakeland Reedy game, I'll be up in McKinney for Lancaster against McKinney North. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts there. Lancaster obviously had that stumble against South Oak Cliff, and then South Oak Cliff turned around and barely showed up against DeSoto, although DeSoto is a heck of a squad, so I'm not going to give him too much crap for that. But talk about the McKinney-Lancaster game. That's week 1 for that district. How do you think that thing's going to fold out?
McKinney North has had a couple of offensive performances that are fantastic. Now, Frisco Memorial is really bad this year, so you can't put too much weight into that. But McKinney North didn't know that, obviously, scheduling 2 years ago, because Frisco Memorial looked like they were going to be on the up and up coming into these couple of years, and they look like they've been decimated. Obviously, they lost their quarterback, Braden Mussett, who's now over at Denton Ryan. Colin Hitchcock is playing fantastic. He has the experience. 10 of 12, 295 yards and 3 touchdowns against Frisco Memorial. They've got running backs aplenty over there. We talk about wide receivers for miles and yards and weeks and all kinds of units of time. McKinney North seems to have that. They had 5 running backs each score a touchdown against Frisco Memorial. Lancaster still looks, a little bit lost. They got that 2 quarterback system, and I'm seeing more and more people talking about that's not really working out like they wanted it to. But what is working out is Kewan Lacey. Obviously, he's a stud. 18 carries for 83 yards in the last game against Denton Guyer. And when you can do that against Denton Guyer's front 7, that's a stat line that is much more impressive than it sounds like. I think this has a chance to be a closer game than a lot of people think. Obviously, Lancaster is the team to beat, so I'm going to stick with them. But what this tells me, if Lancaster cannot blow out McKinney North in a big way, it might be time to bump up Forney over Lancaster, because Forney is playing on all gears. They are playing fantastic football right now.
I'm interested to see Forney this week. I know they're not going to have much problems against West Mesquite, but I just really want to keep checking the schedule, man. I was hoping a Forney competitive game would be coming up soon because I want to see what Fleener's doing out there. We will eventually, but a game that's going to get thousands upon thousands of fans is Lufkin Longview. That it always does. Talk to me about what you think in that game, but make it short because they're not DFW teams.
In our DFW Inside High School,
here we go. East Texas
of the week.
Oh, brother!
We're firing Lake Belton and Colleen Shoemakers. I forgot we have Lufkin Longview as our DFW game of the week.
Why are you torturing me? East Texas.
How many crews are you sending out there, Ward?
I'm sending how many? You know what? None. But go ahead.
You know what happened last year, Ward? I was so excited about this game because Lufkin beat A&M Consolidated in an upset, and now we've got like 3-0 Lufkin against 3-0 Longview, which was number 1 team of the state. And we thought Lufkin was going to do something, and then Longview beat them 56-7 last year in our DFW Inside High School Sports Game of the Week that we talked about last year on the DFW podcast. And Lufkin just completely let me down. I don't think it's going to be that bad this year, but I do think, Keaton Young for Lufkin is a very good ball control running back. TJ Hammond has been more efficient than I thought he was going to be coming into the season. So Lufkin, is playing at a higher level than I thought, but that game is at Longview. I can't see Longview struggling in this game. I don't think it's going to be a 56-7 game, but look for a 42-14 dominant game in our DFW Inside High School Sports DFW Game of the Week. Book it.
You have to say DFW 2-3 times when you know it's EFW, east of. I don't know what the heck.
Fort Worth, east of Fort Worth. That is
east. That would be accurate. All right, let's go to Division 2, 3-5A Division 2. Everybody's playing.
It's all on I-20, Ward. I-20 is it's just right.
I got you. Straight shot. 3-5A Division 2. Everybody's playing teams all over the place. Pittsburgh, Springtown, Pleasant Grove. What do you make of some of these games that's going to get them ready for district play?
No, this is just a bad week when it comes to 3-5A. But to me, I'm most interested in Denton versus Gainesville because we're talking about that bottom four. Who wants it? Denton,
Right.
Frisco Memorial, Frisco Independence, Carrollton Creekview. Who wants it? Denton showed me finally that they might want it, and I think this week they have a chance, even though it's for a Gainesville squad. I think they have a chance to beat Gainesville and maybe be that de facto number 4 team because we know the top 3. We know we're going to get Frisco, Emerson, Argyle, and Lake Dallas. And Lake Dallas is sitting there, having outscored teams. They look almost like Forney right now, outscoring teams 117-10, and they've only played 2.5 halves of football. They had Princeton tapping out last week. So that's a very fun top half of the district. Who wants number 4? Keep an eye on Denton versus Gainesville this week.
That'll help us tell some stuff, right? 4-5A Division II, nobody's playing except for Trimble Tech, who is not only in desperate need of a win, but a point. They haven't scored this year, and they got Shelton School, but it's kind of weird. Everybody's off already.
My schedule shows Fourth Polytechnic playing Arlington Heights. So I don't know why they're playing that game. I think we saw that a couple of years ago, like Lake Highlands and Berkner played a random game in the bye week and took their bye week later on and worked their schedule out. So, we might have that. If it does happen, if it doesn't happen, Arlington Heights is going to be a big favorite. They had a nice bounce back win against Waco University. But Trimble Tech, not playing those early games, I think really hurt them. And Wichita Falls City View took them to task last week. I think, Shelton might take them to task this week. Who knows, or if Trimble Tech can bounce back. But Arlington Heights is looking a little bit better than I thought. And even though OD White is the only 3-0 team in this, I was looking real good. OD White, we had them at number 15. It's a very weak 3-0. I'm not feeling good about that.
You've already quit on them, haven't you? You've quit on them.
I've quit on them. They're in my Mansfield Summit bucket.
What's it going to take to get them? Back on your happy time, because it's obviously not wins because they won them all. What's going to happen?
But you got to get those style points. We keep talking about the style
I agree,
points.
but they're going to
no style points.
What are they going to do in 4-5? Who do they have to beat, and how badly to get them something?
If they can just be competitive with Grapevine and Colleyville Heritage, just lose by 14 or less, I'll start to get back on that bandwagon. Got to beat Arlington Heights, lose to Grapevine and Colleyville Heritage by 14 or less, I start to believe again. But right now, it's looking like Southwest and Northside are going to play them one-score kind of games. And if they have a bad game, 1 or 2 turnovers, they might be straight out of the playoffs because Northside and Southwest are good enough to be competitive in those games.
All right, moving to 5A Division II. Man, what's going on with Summit? I mean, like you said, Mansfield figured them out in the second half, and they Coach George whispered to Coach Len, "This is what you got to do." And Crowley went in there and beat them around too. Demarius Bird, he's a strong arm quarterback, but he's making the turnovers. He's got the 5 picks already, and I didn't see but maybe 1 in the Mansfield game, so that means 4 came in the other 2 games. So talk to me about this team. Can they bounce back against a Seguin team that has proven that they can beat a good team and lose to a good team?
Not only happened for the last 2 games, it happened in the last game. 4 interceptions against Crowley, and that ain't going to do it. And Mansfield Summit absolutely has to have a bounce back because this district is so strong. If Summit can't beat Seguin, where their wins going to come from? Is it going to be Everman? Is it going to be Midlothian Heritage? Ennis, you got to beat somebody at that point, and they're going to struggle. So I'll look for Mansfield Summit to get back into things. You can't have 5 interceptions, 5 turnovers in a game like they did against Crowley. That's where that game got completely away from them. But they got to get an offensive identity. I talked about this with Brock and figuring out that offensive identity. The players that I thought, Joe Williams, he had 2 receptions for no yards last week. Braylon Moore, Devontae Johnson, their running backs, who is going to step up and be that stabilizing force for Mansfield Summit? Right now, it's just like, they got the depth to where they can run in 4, 5, 6 different running backs, but who is that go-to in the fourth quarter when you need a yard, you need 2 yards? Mansfield Summit hasn't shown me they have that go-to player yet. Arlington Seguin, they have shown me they have that go-to player and Saron Evans and Chase Ramirez, but I don't think they have the depth of Mansfield Summit. So I think Mansfield Summit bounces back and wins this game, but I think it's going to be close and hard fought. Give me 28-21 Summit.
Nice. Someone's got to do something, man, because you picked them to go to the state championship, and they got to turn something around here. Unless
I'm number 2, Ward.
you're number
Not
two.
even getting out of the region. Not
All
even
right.
getting out of that region. Ward.
Well, then we need to go.
Losing to South Oak Cliff in
We
the
got to make some edits
regional
in the
finals.
We got to make some quick edits in the 5A preview. Got to yank that thing down off the social media, make some edits, and put it back up.
Get it on TikTok where you guys have songs about bouncing a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Bouncing.
6-5A Division 2, Seagoville Spruce. Talk to me about that. Spruce is 3-0. Seagoville's 2-1. Granted, that one game was 1-0 over Trimble Tech, but talk to me about this game and how much it's going to factor into maybe one of these teams maybe sneaking into a playoff spot. That might be asking too much.
I was excited about Seagoville, and we kind of we established them as our number 2 team in that north area. And we put Spruce in number 3 in the south, and now we're just having a cross. This game means nothing for district, even though they're in the same district. But Spruce 3-0, 3 dominant wins, and Seagoville last week got rolled by a Pinkston team that benched their quarterback for whatever reason and put a defensive end in there and just ran the Wildcat, and they ran all over Seagoville. So Seagoville is showing me that they're not playing competitive football right now at a playoff level, and that opens up that second seed to Hillcrest and Conrad. So I'm getting a little nervous about my pick of Seagoville, whereas Spruce and Kimball are both playing really good football. Kimball just ran Fort Worth Pascal right out of the field last week and dominated. Bam Harrison is doing great things over at Kimball, and Spruce is playing great football. Coach Richardson over there has consistently done great things with the Timberwolves. So this game is absolutely fascinating to me because you have Seagoville, who we got trending down, Spruce trending up. Where is it going to meet? What's going to happen? I'm still going to stick with I believe that Seagoville has more talent, but if Spruce beats Seagoville in this game, all bets are off in this district as far as Spruce not making the playoffs in the South region and Seagoville making the playoffs in the north part of the zone. I won't be so sure about that anymore. So I'm completely fascinated by this game.
Well, let's also talk about our 2-time reigning, defending division
Pick'em champion. That's me, Ward.
State title, South Oak Cliff state champs. It's one thing to play a solid non-district schedule, which they do and they need to. It's another thing to have to tap out at halftime and be like, let's get the heck out of here, because DeSoto had them tapping out probably at the end of the first quarter, and they get a bounce back game against Paris Episcopal, a team that they came back from a couple scores down to win in overtime last year. They get them at Kincaid this year. Talk to me about how you think Stock will do in this one.
I want to give a little bit of a shout out. You may edit this out, and it's fine if you edit it out, but I don't think you will, Ward, because you are a man of the people, and you don't mind when we talk about other media outlets. You don't seem to have you're offended by that. But there is a podcast out there that's a completely different kind of a podcast than our podcast. It's called The Dub. And The Dub talks mostly South Dallas. They talk Duncanville, DeSoto, and South Oak Cliff. And they get these coaches on, and they talk real talk. It's not coach talk on there. And this past Sunday, they brought on Coach Todd and Coach Ward for South Oak Cliff to talk about what happened against DeSoto. And they were full on accountable. And they talked about how they got their butts whipped and the different elements of that, and they owned their loss. And what I learned about those coaches is they talked about what a winning mentality is and how they expected DeSoto to want to hang 100 on them, and they want that. They want that atmosphere, and they want that kind of a challenge because it's their job to put their kids in situations to overcome those adversities. And to me, listening to those two coaches talk about how they got whooped and the accountability and responsibility that they held in that interview made me even bigger fans of Coach Todd and Coach Ward than I was going into that, which I'm a huge mark for Coach Ward and Coach Todd. And Coach Todd is so real, and when he gets a microphone, he will tell you exactly what it is. Yeah. And I don't want to steal the thunder from the dub and just rehash everything that was talked about, but they even went line by line on DeSoto and Duncanville, who they thought was better position by position, who they thought would win and all that. One of the more fascinating listens I've heard in a while in the world of podcasting. So if you want to go check that out, it's the last 30 minutes of this past Sunday. It's a really informative listen if you care about Duncanville, DeSoto, and you care about South Oak Cliff. But Parish Episcopal, on the other hand, has not played competitively at all. They seem to have dropped off significantly from this massive run they've been on. So I think South Oak Cliff licking their wounds and the growth that they're going to have. Even in the second half, you could see them grow against DeSoto because DeSoto was not letting off the gas. DJ Bailey got hurt and he came right back in the game. It was a situation like we saw with Hondo Franklin against College Station. He got hurt. We thought they were going to pull him out. No, he was not getting off that sideline again. And DJ Bailey was the same way for DeSoto. So I think that South Oak Cliff is going to bounce back and beat Parish Episcopal by at least 2 scores.
Excellent. All right, let's move on to 7-5-8. Division 2, interesting matchup because Lovejoy Terrell, most people won't find that. Just saying those 2 names, they think, okay, Lovejoy's got that one. What's the next district we're talking about? Lovejoy's ailing. Parker Livingstone's going to be out for a while. So they're going to have to do it without him. They got a bunch of other players that are kind of sick. They'll probably be over it by this week. So they got injuries, they got sickness, but Jalen Lott was playing great both ways. Boy, he reminds me of the high school version of the kid at Colorado whose name escapes me already, the one that's playing both ways. Man, I can't remember his name. I feel stupid for not. But then you go to Terrell with Chase Bingham, and they told us they were going to run the ball this year, and that's exactly what they're doing. He's already up to 500 yards, just about 9 touchdowns. Does Terrell have a chance in this one? I mean, because Lovejoy was really the weather really affected them against North Crowley because they were beating them, and all of a sudden the weather came out. North Crowley came back. Gates must have said some things that we can't repeat on here, and took them to task in the second half.
Burn the ships.
Yeah, exactly.
Burn the ships.
What do you think about Terrell's chance of pulling off the upset?
First of all, if you remember, Ward, I had an epic fail, and you're very nice and you edited it out. But we were talking about Ethan Terrell, and I was trying to compare him to some Allen quarterback, and I was fumbling like, who's that really good quarterback for Allen? And I couldn't get out the name Kyler Murray. Finally got out Kyler Murray, and you're trying to get out Travis Hunter. So I've got your back, Ward. Travis Hunter is a fantastic two-way player, and I love that we're seeing more. That Travis Hunter is making that two-way kind of a position more popular because being cross-trained in those kind of positions only helps you out in college, only makes you a more dangerous NFL consideration as far as that goes. So you've got Lovejoy, who was hurt last week and sick and all the things you mentioned. And what you really saw that, they got out on North Crowley big, and then they just didn't have the depth or the ability to stick in that game. So did they get better? That's going to be something we're going to learn about with Terrell, because all Terrell's going to do is run it down their throat. Lyndon Henderson, their quarterback, only threw the ball 4 times last week. Terrell is looking really good. Chase Bingham, 22 carries for 137 yards and 5 touchdowns. But Lovejoy with Oliver Pierce or Peyton Pierce, Oliver Pierce is his daddy. Peyton Pierce they played a lot better running the ball if they have all their players there. So this is going to be a fantastic test. Dante Dean, I think, is going to have a good bounce back performance. I think Lovejoy is going to out Terrell this week, and it's going to be a fascinating game. But one thing I could really see in losing Parker Livingstone is that Dalen McCutcheon is now his security blanket, and now that's putting a little bit more stress on Jalen Lott to produce, who is only a sophomore. So who's going to be that third receiver to step up until Parker Livingstone gets back? Because once you start to have 2 really good DBs who can kind of shadow Dalen McCutcheon, that could shut down the passing game. And I think North Crowley, you could see in the second half, start to make those adjustments. And Dalen McCutcheon got his short yardage kind of things, but he wasn't able to get those big chunk yards that Parker Livingstone was able to get. So I'm very fascinated within a game, and Lovejoy's depth is kind of the one deciding factor that I don't know if I can continue to pick them over Melissa if they can't get healthy on both sides of the ball.
And as for Terrell, man, we both in agreement. That's a That's a solid playoff team. We don't have to
It
worry
really
about
is.
them not making the postseason, and nobody's taking them lightly this year, like a certain team did last year and ended up getting tripped up and beat. And I think they won 2. Did they beat Everman too? Didn't they get 2
Yeah,
wins?
they beat Texas High and Everman.
In Everman, it was a solid.
And they lost to Melissa, but
Yeah, well, that's
lost to
gonna
Melissa
happen.
twice. That's what happens.
It's gonna happen. Hey, another thing we're gonna see this week is rain. And we're seeing it right now, as a matter of fact. And I don't know if I've seen that since April. So it may be raining out at my games, but I'm going to take it because I don't care. It's better than having my boys out there mowing that dirt. We're finally going to have some grass growing out there for them to mow.
Small school Digsy can bring a poncho.
There you go. Bring the poncho. And you don't have a Plano East game, so you don't have to paint your face at black and gold. It won't run all over the place.
I do the body paint. I go shirtless, and I got the black and gold, and I have the onesie under, and it's really disgusting. But they love me over at Plano East, so they accept me.
Well, look, by next week we will be deep into district play, and maybe there's 1 or 2 districts that won't have started, but we're ready to go, man. I'm ready. Now we're starting to play.
You won't talk about the districts that haven't started because you hate small schools, even though you let off this week trying to pretend like you like small schools. Like, let's lead with this.
How about that? I had to give myself a pat on the back for leading with small schools. I'm that guy.
Pat Doney on the back, if you will.
A Pat Doney on the back. All right, Diggsy, I will see you next week, brother.
We'll see you down the road.